Hello, my name is Marina Markovиć and I'm going to be your English teacher today. Today's lesson is about past continuous and past simple. We're going to talk about how do we form the past simple and past continuous. When do we use them? And how do we know the difference? Are you ready? You are? Let's start. First, we're going to talk about past simple. Let me remind you of the regular and irregular verbs in the English language. To make past simple for the regular verbs, we use the base form, which is also called the infinitive form of the verb, and add ed. Like in these examples, play, which is the infinitive, we add the suffix ed and thus we get played. Jump plus ed, we get jumped. The same rule applies to visit. Plus ed, we get visited. Dakle, da bi konstruisali prošlo vreme pravilnih glagola, na infinitivnu osnovu glagola dodajemo nastavak ed i tako gradimo njegovo prošlo vreme, koje važi za sva lica. Okay, let's move on. If the infinitive ends in e, we just add d. For example, like, it ends in e, and now we just use d from the suffix, thus getting liked. Or in phone, it also ends in e, getting d from the suffix, and now we have constructed the past tense of phone, which is phoned. Dakle, ukoliko se infinitivna osnova glagola završava na e, jednostavno dodajemo samo d iz nastavka. Okay, let's move on. However, verbs which end in y preceded by a consonant change y into I before adding ed to the verb. What does that mean? For example, this verb here, hurry, ends in y. You can see the consonant preceding it. So we have to make some changes now. We have to change y into I. And then we add the suffix ed, thus getting hurried. Or an example study. Also, it ends in y, preceded by a consonant d. Again, you have to make changes. Y transforms into I before adding the suffix ed, thus getting studied. Dakle, ukoliko se glagol završava na y, a prethodi mu suglasnik, tada moramo neke izmene da izvršimo. Y moramo da pretvorimo i pre dodavanja nastavka ed za prošlo vreme. Okay, let's move on. Verbs ending in consonant, vowel consonant, double the last letter before adding ed. What do I mean by that? Look at this example. Grab. You can see the mentioned combination. R, consonant, A, vowel, and B, consonant. So before adding ed, we have to double the last consonant and thus getting grabbed or stop. We double the P, use the suffix ed, and get stopped. When it comes to the irregular verbs, they have a unique past simple form. So what does that mean, a unique past simple form? It means that you have to learn them by heart. For example, come, which is the infinitive, its past form is came. Go, its past form is went. Find, found. Make, made. Do, did. have, had. This one is particularly important for us. Okay, and now let's have a look at some examples. In the affirmative case, it rained yesterday. They went to the theater 15 minutes ago. Mary bought a new dress last week. Look how precise these adverbs are. When did it rain? Yesterday. Juče je padala kiša. They went to the theater 15 minutes ago. When did they go to the theater? 15 minutes ago. Dakle, otišli su u pozorište pre 15 minuta. When did Mary buy a new dress? She bought it last week. Dakle, kupila je prošle nedelje. The thing about past simple is that we always know when something happened. Okay, and now we are ready for the interrogative form. How do we form it? Look, we use the auxiliary verb to do, which is did, in the past simple, and the infinitive form of the main verb. So this is the past tense of the auxiliary verb do, which is did, plus subject, plus the infinitive of the main verb. Dakle, da bismo konstruisali upitan oblik u prošlom vremenu, koristimo prošlo vreme pomoćnog glagola do koji glasi did za sva lica, subjekat i infinitiv glavnog glagola. Look at this example. She played football. You can guess from the suffix ed that here we are talking about a regular verb. Now let's make question. Did she play football? Did she play football? Or they went to Paris last night. Did they? Now we have to make the changes. We have to go back in the first column. So the infinitive form of the went is go. So did they go to Paris last night? So the same rules apply both to regular and irregular verbs. Let's move on to the negative form. We add not to the past simple tense of the auxiliary verb to do, which is did, contracting it into didn't, plus the infinitive of the main verb. Look at the construction. In the first place, we use subject. Then we use didn't. We can say did not, but didn't is in much wider use. And again, the infinitive of the main verb. Dakle, kada želimo da konstruišemo odričan oblik, koristimo subjekat na prvom mestu, odričan oblik pomoćnog glagola do u prošlom vremenu koji glasi didn't, za sva lica, i infinitiv glavnog glagola. For example, Sarah opened the window. Again, the regular verb. Sarah, which is the subject, didn't open, which is the infinitive. Or, when we talk about irregular verbs, such as met, James met his teacher the other day. James, the subject, didn't, and again we have to go back in the first column, meet his teacher the other day. Okay, I'll give you a couple of seconds to write down these constructions. Take your time. Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to talk about the use of this tense. When do we use the past simple? To talk about a completed action in the past. Dakle, kada govorimo o radnji koja je završena u prošlosti. For example, he went to Paris 2 days ago. Otišao je u Pariz pre 2 dana. Or, we saw him last night. Vidjeli smo ga sinoć. Also, we use past simple to talk about facts that belong to the past. Dakle, ovo vreme također koristimo kada govorimo o činjenicama koje pripadaju definitivno prošlosti. For example, the Berlin Wall fell in 1989. Or, John Lennon died in 1980. So, when did the Berlin Wall fall? It fell in 1989, so we know the exact year. Or, when did John Lennon die? He died in 1980. We use it to talk about past habits. He played the piano when he was young. So you can see this underlined part here, when he was young. He was in a habit of playing the piano. Now he doesn't play anymore. But when he was young, he used to. Or, when Sam was young, he walked 10 miles to his work every day. Dakle, kada je Sam bio mlad, pešačio je 10 milja, odnosno nekih 8 km do posla svakog dana. There is also this narrative use of this tense, when events of the story are in chronological order. For example, she opened the door, looked at us, and went to her room. So one action is instantly followed by the other. And here are some most frequent keywords which are actually indicators to this tense. Yesterday, 2 days ago, last month, in 1990, and so on. Now we are ready to go one step ahead and talk about past continuous tense. How do we form it? Let's see. We use the past tense of the auxiliary verb to be and present participle of the main verb. So this is the past tense of the auxiliary verb be, was and were, plus present participle. Look at the affirmative case. I was working. He was working. She was working. It was working. You were working. We were working. And they were working. Do you notice something? Working. Look at working, the present participle. Does it change? No, it doesn't. It stays the same. The only thing that alters here is the past tense of the auxiliary verb be. So was and were. We change that. Present participle stays the same. Dakle, prilikom konstrukcije past continuousa koristimo prošlo vreme pomoćnog glagola be, a to je was i were, plus sadašnji participi. Kao što možemo da primetimo, kada ga menjamo po licima, on ne trpi nikakve promjene. Dakle, ostaje isti u svim licima, jedino što menjamo jeste prošlo vreme pomoćnog glagola be, was, odnosno were. Okay, I'll give you a couple of seconds to write down this affirmative case. Okay, let's move on. Now we talk about the negative case. What do you think? What do we do? Of course, just add not to the past tense of the auxiliary verb be. So we get I was not, or the contracted form, wasn't working. He was not, or wasn't working. She was not, or she wasn't working. It was not, it wasn't working. You were not, weren't working. We were not, weren't working. and they weren't working. The same thing with the negative case. Present participle stays the same. It doesn't change. Let's move on to the interrogative case. When I say the interrogative case, I mean inversion in this particular one. What does that mean, inversion? Of course, the change of places. So what do I change? I change places of the subject and past tense of the auxiliary verb be. So, instead of saying I was working, I'd say was I working? Instead of saying he was working, I say was he working? Was she working? Was it working? And here are the short answers. Yes, I was. Yes, he was. Yes, she was. Yes, it was. So when I use these short answers, I always go back to the beginning of the question, using was for a positive answer or wasn't for the negative one. Let's move on. Were you working? Were we working? Were they working? And these are short answers. Yes, you were. Yes, we were. Yes, they were. Or the negative ones. No, you weren't. No, we weren't. No, they weren't. Okay, you can write this down. Take your time. Okay, now we're going to talk about the use of this tense. When do we use it? We use the past continuous to describe actions started and finished in the past, emphasizing duration. So we want to show the reader or the other listener that the action lasted for quite some time. Dakle, past continuous koristimo da opišemo radnje koje su se odvijale duže u prošlosti sa naglaskom na trajanju. Dakle, ovdje je uvijek akcenat na trajanju, da se neka radnja duže odvijala u prošlosti. For example, it was raining all day yesterday. Look at this underlined part here. All day yesterday. Dakle, padala je kiša čitavog dana juče. Or, in the other example, John was working at his office all day. So look at this ticking clock. He was working all day long. Čitav dan je radio u kancelariji. Or, he was sleeping all night. He slept through the night. Čitavu noć je spavao. Dakle, ovdje je akcenat na trajanju. Radnja se duže odvijala u prošlosti. Okay? We also use it to describe an action that was in progress at some point in the past. Ovdje govorimo o trajanju radnje, ali u nekom određenom trenutku u prošlosti. Dakle, znamo precizan moment kada se radnja odvijala. For example, my brother was riding his bike yesterday at 7. So when was he riding his bike? Yesterday at 7. Or, they were doing an exam last Friday at 2:30. So when were they doing an exam? Last Friday at 2:30. Or, Pauline was playing the guitar at 9 p.m. last night. When was she playing the guitar? Last night at 9 p.m. Okay, To describe an ongoing action in the past interrupted by a sudden event. We have to be very careful about this use because we use the past simple for the interrupting action. Ovdje govorimo o trajanju radnje u prošlosti koja je prekinuta nekom drugom kraćom prošlom radnjom i po pravilu ta druga kraća prošla radnja koja prekida se izražava past simple. Dakle, prosto prošlim vremenom. Look at this example. Leo was working at the laboratory, Leo, this guy here, when the phone rang. So he was in the process of something, dakle radnja se odvijala u prošlosti, he was working, duže je trajala, when, kada je prekinuta nekom drugom prošlom kratkom radnjom. Dakle, zvonjavom telefonom, zvonjava telefona je praktično prekinula rad. Leo was working, ta radnja se izražava past continuousom i ponavljam, ova kraća radnja koja je prekida, dakle the interrupting action, is used in the past simple. Again, he broke his leg while he was climbing the ladder. So, what do you think? Which action was longer? Breaking of the leg or climbing the ladder? Of course, climbing the ladder. So while he was climbing the ladder, znači dok se peo s merdevine, što je duže trajalo tako, zato je izraženo past continuousom, something must have happened, he fell and broke his leg. Pao je i polomio nogu. You can see the consequence. He's crying. Okay, let's move on. This tense is also used to describe two actions happening at the same time in the past. Dakle, ovdje govorimo o dve uporedne radnje koje su se odvijale duže u prošlosti. Te dve uporedne radnje, znači paralelno su se odvijale, nezavisne jedna od druge i obe se izražavaju past continuousom. Pogledajte. The boy was playing with the dog while his dad was mowing the lawn. Dakle, dečak se igrao sa psom dok je njegov tata kosio travnjak. Two actions happening at the same time, individual from each other, not intervened, and both used in past continuous tense. Or, while mom was making dinner, the children were playing cards. Dok je mama spremala večeru, deca su igrala karte. Tom was watching TV, this is Tom, while Ellen was reading. Dok je Ellen čitala. Okay? We use the past continuous tense for activities as background description. Dakle, ovo vrijeme još i koristimo u opisima, u naraciji, u tom smislu. For example, look at this beautiful scenery. Let us describe it. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. The breeze was whispering. The kids were flying their kites in the field, and so on and so on. Dakle, u opisima također koristimo past continuous tense. Okay, let's do some practice. Jamie hurt himself when he rode his bike. I watch TV when she ring me. At 5 p.m., Mrs. Simpson have a cup of coffee. Mary prepare lunch when they come. My sister cut her finger while she chopped some onions. And they dance while we play chess. Okay, you can write these sentences down. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Take your time. Are you ready? Let's do them. Jamie hurt himself when he was riding his bike. So the second action was longer, that's why it's used in past continuous. Dakle, on je vozio bicikl when he hurt himself, kada se povredio. Ova radnja je po pravilu izražena simple past. I was watching TV when she rang me. So I was in the process of something, in the process of watching TV, when something happened and she rang me. She stopped me from watching TV. Dakle, ova radnja prekida trajanje prethodne. At 5 p.m., Mrs. Simpson was having a cup of coffee. U 5 popodne, gospođa Simpson je pila kafu. So, at that precise moment in the past, we know what was going on. She was having a cup of coffee. Dakle, ovo je upotreba kada govorimo o radnji koja se duže odvijela, ali u nekom određenom trenutku u prošlosti. Mary was preparing lunch when they came. So she was in the process of something, preparing lunch. They showed up, they appeared, they came, whatever, and interrupted her. Dakle, ova radnja, the interrupting action, is used in the simple past. And the first one, the longer one, in past continuous. My sister cut her finger while she was chopping some onions. Again, she was doing something, chopping some onions, when an accident happened. She cut herself. And then she stopped chopping, right? Dakle, prva radnja, ovdje konkretno na ovom mestu, na prvom mestu, prekida ovu drugu koja je duže trajala. The longer action is used in past continuous and the interrupting action again in the simple past. They were dancing while we were playing chess. Both actions are used in past continuous because they both were ongoing in the past at the same time, individual from each other, not intervened. Dakle, dve radnje ili više, tako, se odvijaju paralelno, istovremeno u prošlosti. Okay, that's it, that's the end. I hope you've enjoyed your English lesson. I know I have. Goodbye and stay healthy.